Alright, welcome back to our final video on Much Ado About Nothing. We are on Act 5, finally. Now, we have had in Act 4, if you remember, everything fell apart, right? Claudio rejected Hero at the altar. Benedict finally said he loved Beatrice, and Beatrice finally said she loved him back. And he said, "Bid me do anything for you." And she said, "Kill Claudio." And after going back and forth for a bit, he decides to go and challenge Claudio to a duel, right? He picks Beatrice over his best friend. Okay. So, and Hero's father, Leonardo, was like really, really angry with her, really upset with her, right? But then after the other guys talked him round, he started to think maybe there was something else going on. All right. So, when we start this, Act 5, we are on the road for this to be a tragedy, right? Um, they are pretending that Hero died of shame, and they're going to tell Claudio and Don Pedro that she died. And if Claudio doesn't forgive her and think better of her, she's going to go live in a convent, right? So that love connection is going to be completely destroyed. Leonardo has basically sworn vengeance on the prince, so the alliances and the peacefulness of the country is going to be destroyed. And Benedict has sworn to fight his best friend. So that friendship is going to be destroyed. Right? We are on track for a tragedy. But this is a comedy. So watch how things play out and how stuff comes back together by people having conversations, which is what Claudio should have done with Euro in the first place, right? Okay, so in scene one of Act 5, we have Antonio, Leonardo's brother, and Leonardo doing that thing that guys do when they're really upset, which is basically Leonardo is just, he's overwhelmed, he's angry, he's scared, he's mad, he doesn't know what to do with all of these feelings, and he's talking them through with his brother. And Antonio's kind of trying to calm him down, um, but Leonardo doesn't want to be calmed down. And Antonio's doing that thing like, I know what you're going through. And Leonardo's like, no, you don't. You don't know what I'm going through. So, into this kind of frustrated situation come Don Pedro and Claudio, the two people Antonio and Leonardo 100% do not want to see, right? And also, they're going to lie to them and tell them Hero's dead. All right. So in comes the prince and Claudio. They're very polite because they're like, look, we don't have beef with you. Our problem was with your daughter, right? So they're very polite. And Leonardo starts with them. Like, hear you, my lords. Some haste, my lord. Well, fare you well. Are you so hasty now? He starts having beef. And Don Petrus, look, don't fight with us. And Antonio's like, well, if you don't want to fight with him, fight with me. And so it ends with Leonardo actually challenging Claudio to a duel over the death of his daughter and over the shame of everything and the lies he told. So Leonardo's come all the way around, right? Um, and he straight up challenges him. He says, that I am forced to lay my reverence by, and with grey hairs and the bruise of many days do challenge thee to trial of a man. I say thou hast belied mine innocent child. Thy slander hath gone through and through her heart, and she lies buried with her ancestors. Oh, in a tomb where never scandal slept, save this of hers framed by thy villainy. And Claudio is surprised that she's dead, but still says, I didn't do anything wrong. All I did was tell the truth, right? And the prince says, you say not right, old man. My lord, I'll prove it on his body if he dare. These are fighting words. But Leonardo, as much as he wants to fight Claudio, Claudio refuses to fight him. He's like, I'm not fighting with you. And Antonio backs him up. Antonio's like, um, Leonardo says, "Thou hast killed my child. If thou killest me, boy, thou shalt kill a man." And Antonio comes in. "He shall kill two of us, and men indeed. But that's no matter. Let him kill one first." So Antonio like puts himself in front of his brothers, like, "I'll take him first." And then the two brothers kind of like, "Wait, wait, but this is my fight, but this is your fight." They go, you know. But then Claudio refuses to fight any of them, and the prince refuses to fight any of them. The prince says, "Gentlemen both, we will not wake your patience. My heart is sorry for your daughter's death, but on my honor she was charged with nothing but what was true and very full of proof." And he says, my lord, I will not hear you." And so he absolutely refuses to listen to Leonardo. And that bond that they had at the beginning is broken, right? Okay, now Benedict comes in. So it's Don Pedro, the prince, and Claudio standing there after this encounter. And in comes Benedict. Now they think, "Oh, Benedict's going to come in. He's always good for a joke. That was a really depressing scene that we were just part of. Let's talk to Benedict. He's always fun. He'll cheer us up." And Claudio says, "We had like to have our two noses snapped off by two old men without teeth." Leonardo and his brother, "What thinkest thou? Had we fought them, I doubt we should have been too young for them." And Benedict says, "In a false quarrel there is no true valor. I come to seek you both." And Claudio says, "Well, we've been looking for you too." And Benedict refuses to be funny. And they think, "Oh, Benedict's in love. That's why he's acting like this," right? And Benedict doesn't want to play. He says, "Sir, I shall meet your wit in career, and you charge it against me. I pray you choose another subject." He's really, really angry. And Benedict pulls Claudio aside and says, "Shall I speak a word in your ear?" And he backs Claudio like up against a wall and goes, "You are a villain. I jest not." Because Claudio thought he's playing around. He's like, "I'm not playing around. I will make it good. How you dare with what you dare and when you dare. Do me right or I will protest your cowardice. You have killed a sweet lady and her death shall fall heavy on you. Let me hear from you." And Claudio says, "Well, I will meet you, so I may have good cheer." Okay, so Claudio accepts the challenge. Benedict issues the challenge, and Claudio can't back down from this. Now, you remember when we were talking about back in the Middle Ages about never turn your back on a challenge, right? Or never turn your back on an enemy, and you can't refuse a challenge from an equal? We're seeing a little overlay here, right? Claudio and Don Pedro could refuse a challenge from Leonardo because he's not really their equal, but Benedict is. Benedict and Claudio are equals, and Claudio, they're both soldiers. They both work for Don Pedro. They're equals, right? Claudio can't turn down this challenge and keep his honor. So now it's on, right? So Claudio, by the rules of dueling, Claudio now has to choose a weapon and a place and a second. Okay, and then they're going to fight. And then Benedict turns to the prince. And the prince is still trying to josh around with him with Beatrice, but now Claudio's in a bad mood. Benedict is being terribly serious, and the prince is the one who just like doesn't fit any with the dynamics are just weird. And Benedict finally says to him, "My lord, for your many courtesies, I thank you. I must discontinue your company. Your brother the bastard is fled from Messina. You have among you killed a sweet and innocent lady. For my lord Lackbeard here, he and I shall meet. Till then, peace be with him." Benedict quits the army and refuses to serve with um, Don Pedro anymore because Pedro was a party to this slander and it's dishonorable, and Benedict quits and won't have anything to do with him. We stand Benedict, right? So the prince is like, "Oh my God, he means it." And Claudio's, "Yeah, he challenged me to a duel. He means this. He's serious." And they both decide he's doing this for the love of Beatrice. Okay. So now, right on the back of all of this, as they're kind of stunned at the change in Benedict, in come the constables, right? The night watchman, Dogberry and the Verges and the night watchman, and the prisoners, Conrad and Baraccio. And they have pulled them in front of Don Pedro so that they can tell them what they found in the confession, right? And in the interrogation that you saw earlier last act. And so Dogberry, again, it does his comedy talking because, again, Shakespeare being a really good writer, we have been up here with the tension, right? And now he brings it down using some comedy, but he's also resolving the plot line. So in front of the prince and Claudio, um, Borachio confesses to everything, and that it was all Don John's idea. It was never Hero, right? Um, and because now he realizes, okay, the guy I was doing this for left. I'm hung out to dry by myself. And this isn't just a matter of breaking up a wedding. Like, this is murder. And it's serious. And he confesses to the prince. Um, and he says, briefly, I desire nothing but the reward of a villain. So he's asking for punishment. And the prince turns to Claudio and says, runs not this speech like iron through your blood? And Claudio says, I have drunk poison whilst he uttered it. So they realized not only have they been tricked by this guy, but that they've ruined and killed Hero and their accomplices, essentially, to her murder. That they've ruined everything because they believed these lies. So, and we find out Don John ran, which we already knew. And Claudio regrets everything. He's that meme of, I regret everything. He says, sweet Hero, now thy image doth appear in rare semblance, that I loved it first. So he is like, totally sees Hero back the way he did the beginning. And so Borachio is going to get dragged off for punishment. In comes Leonato um, and Antonio, and Leonato has heard what has been said, and he confronts Borachio. And he says, oh, this is so good. Okay. He says, which is the villain? Let me see his eyes, that when I note another man like him, I may avoid him. Which of these is he? And Borachio says, if you would know your wronger, look on me. Art thou the slave that with thy breath killed mine innocent child? Yea, I alone. And then Leonato does this. He says, no, not so, villain. Thou beliest thyself. Here stand a pair of honorable men. A third is Flood that had a hand in it. I thank you, princes, for my daughter's death. Record it with your high and worthy deeds. 'Twas bravely done if you but think you of it. Oh! Right? Mm. And then Claudio says, like, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to say I'm sorry. Pick your own revenge. Because I deserve everything. And the prince, Don Pedro, also says, I would bend under any heavy weight that he'll adjoin me to. So they both ask for consequences to try and make it right. This should sound a little bit like Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, right? I did wrong. How can I make it right? Okay. Leonato says, I cannot bid my daughter live. That were impossible. Except remember, she's not really dead, right? But he says, okay, here's the consequences. They need to go tell everybody in Messina that Hero was innocent. Because everybody was at the wedding and everybody heard all these rumors. So you've got to fix the problem. You've got to go tell everybody she was innocent. Then you need to spend the night praying at her tomb, which is the family tomb, and hang an epitaph, which is a poem usually of good words about someone who's died. Hang an epitaph upon her tomb and sing it to her bones. Sing it tonight. So he's got to go fix the rumors. He's got to tell everybody she was innocent. Then he's got to spend the night praying and praising her at her tomb. And then in the morning, he says, tomorrow morning come you to my house. And since you could not be my son-in-law, be yet my nephew. My brother hath a daughter, almost the copy of my child that's dead, and she alone is heir to both of us. Give her the right you should have given her cousin, and so dies my revenge. So, basically, in the morning, after you've fixed the problem that you caused, come to my house and we will reestablish this alliance through marriage. You're going to marry my niece, who's the heir now to my fortune. Okay, this niece doesn't exist. It's not Beatrice he's talking about. There's another niece who looks just like Hero, who we've never seen. Sus, right? Sus. But Claudio is so overwhelmed with guilt, he doesn't clock it. And he takes this. I do embrace your offer and dispose for henceforth of poor Claudio. So he's going to take the offer. He's going to get rid of old Claudio, and he's going to be a better, more honest man from here on in. And Leonardo says he's going to go talk to Margaret because part of this was her fault, but not really. Um, and Don Pedro is going to go deal with his brother. And Dogberry's like, remember that Baraccio called me a bad name. Don't forget it, please. Uh, and so the scene ends with them coming back together, right? These alliances that were broken are coming back together. Okay. Now, this leads us into scene two. Benedict is sitting there and he's trying to write poetry and he's really bad at it, right? Margaret comes in. He asks Margaret to go find Beatrice for him because he charged Claudio and he wants Beatrice to know that he did. So he asks her, and then he and Margaret, remember Margaret's like, Beatrice is now grumpy, so I'm the funny one. So they have a little like back and forth, which is a bit saucy. And she goes to get Beatrice, and then Benedict is trying to write poetry, and it's really bad. Uh, and he talks about that he was not born under a rhyming planet, nor could I woo in festival terms. Now remember, he writes bad poetry. Put that in the back of your head. Okay. Beatrice comes in. He talks to her, and they tease a little bit. But then he's like, "Hang on, I want to just talk to you without play fighting." Like, and she asks what happened between him and Claudio. He says only foul words. And then she is going to leave, and he's like, I must tell thee plainly, Claudio undergoes my challenge, and either I must shortly hear from him, or I will subscribe him a coward. And I pray thee now tell me, for which of thy bad parts didst thou first fall in love with me? So he wants to talk of love to her. And so they have a little like loving conversation. Um, and Benedict goes, thou and I are too wise to woo peaceably. So they're too much fun to just be in love without teasing back and forth, right? They're not going to sit and write poetry to each other. That's not their thing. Okay. Now, I kind of love the end of this scene. Benedict asks, "How does Beatrice? How doth your cousin?" Beatrice, or how does Hero? Very ill. How do you? Very ill too. Serve God, love me, and mend. Okay, but the scene's not over yet because in comes Ursula. Remember Ursula from before, and she's like, "Hey, guess what? Madam, you must come to your uncle's. Yonder's old quail at home. It's proved my lady Hero hath been falsely accused. The prince and Claudia mightily abused. Don John is the author of all who's fled and gone. Will you come?" So, like, everything's come out. Everybody knows everything. Come, be part of it. And Beatrice turns to Benedict and says, "Will you go hear this news, senor?" And he says, "I will live in thy heart, die in thy lap, and be buried in thine eyes. And moreover, I will go with thee to thy uncle's." It's such a good line. All right, then we get to scene three. This is a very, very short scene. Usually it would be mostly like silent acting and music in the background. And it's Claudio. It's that night. He's at Hero's tomb, the Leonardo's family monument. And he does the poem in honor of Hero and sings it and hangs it onto her tomb. And he prays at her tomb all night. Okay. Then it's the morning, and they have to go take off their funeral clothes, put on wedding clothes, and go get married to this cousin. All right, so now we've got wedding scene, take two. And in scene four, the friar's like, I told you she was innocent. Um, and Leonardo says, okay, well, everybody heard Margaret was at fault, but it wasn't really her fault because she didn't know. And this is Claudio's reckoning. Okay, so everybody's going to come in masked. Remember the mask ball earlier? So they're all going to come in wearing masks so that Claudio and the prince and everybody can't quite tell who's who. All right, so the ladies go out. Antonio walks. Um, okay, so Leonardo and Benedict talk, and Benedict asks for Beatrice's hand in marriage, and Leonardo agrees. Okay, now in come the prince and Claudio. The prince and Leonardo make up. Leonardo asks Claudio, like, are you sure that you're going to marry this cousin? Like, are you still good with our deal? And Claudio says something that's a little bit racist. We've hit this before in this play. He says, I'll hold my mind were she an Ethiop. So basically, like, even if she were African or black, I would agree to this marriage. Claudio, we already are annoyed with you. We don't need this, please. But, sign of the times. So, fun times. But I don't want to skip things like that because it's important to point that stuff out. So, they say, call her forth. The friar's ready. Wedding take two. The prince and Claudio make up with Benedict. They tease him a little bit, but he's like, I'm not going to take teasing. I'm in love. It's fine. In come Hero, Beatrice, Margaret, and Ursula wearing masks. Antonio walks Hero up the aisle like he's her father. They introduce her. Claudio says, give me your hand before this holy friar. I am your husband if you like of me. And then Hero says, and when I lived, I was your other wife. And when you loved, you were my other husband. And she takes off her mask, and it's Hero, and he's shocked. Another Hero? Claudio is he's a few sandwiches short of a picnic. Hero says, nothing certainer. One hero died defiled, but I do live, and surely as I live, I am a maid. And the prince is shocked, and Leonardo then clears everything up, and he says, she died, my lord, but whilst her slander lived. So while the lies were alive, she was dead. But now that the lies are dead, she's alive again. Okay, and the friar's like, look, we'll handle all this later. Let's get this wedding over with. And the ladies are all still masked, and Benedict asks, which one is Beatrice? And Beatrice answers. And Benedict asks, do not you love me? And she says, why, no more than reason. Because now, like, they're not by themselves, right? They're in the church in front of everybody. And Benedict says, well, then your uncle, the prince, and Claudio have been deceived. They swore you did. She says, do not you love me? Troth, no more than reason. Why, then my cousin Margaret and Ursula were much deceived, for they did swear you did. And they swore you were almost sick for me. They swore you were well nigh dead for me. Well, 'tis no matter. Then you don't love me? No, truly, but in friendly recompense. Right, so this wedding, this relationship is like almost not going to happen just because they're so proud they won't admit in front of other people that they love each other. Okay, then Claudio jumps in and says, I'll be sworn on it that he loves her, for here's a paper written in his own hand, a halting sonnet of his own pure brain fashioned to Beatrice. Remember I told you he writes bad poetry? He stole one of the bad poems that Benedict wrote to her. And then Hero says, and here's another written my cousin's hand, stolen from her pocket, containing her affection onto Benedict, right? And she pulls it out, and they hand the papers to Beatrice and Benedict, and they see that their own poems are like our own words are against them. And he says, come, I will have thee, but by this light I take thee for pity. Beatrice says, I would not deny you, But on this good day I yield upon great persuasion, and partly to save your life, for I was told you were in consumption. So, like, I'm going to marry you for pity. Well, I'm going to marry you for pity. And then Benedict says, peace, I will stop your mouth. And they kiss. Ah! Okay, so then the prince teases Benedict a little bit, and Benedict is like, I changed my mind. It's fine. And Claudio and Benedict make up. They agree not to fight. They're gonna have a dance and then get married. And Leonardo's like, dancing afterwards, marriage first. And Benedict's like, dancing first, marriage afterwards. And in comes a messenger saying that John has been arrested and is being brought back to Messina. And Benedict turns to the prince and says, don't worry about him. I'll deal with him later. Have fun right now. Like, enjoy the moment. And that's where the play ends. It's such a good play. You don't get the satisfaction of Don John seeing what happens to him, but since he's so barely in the play to start with, he's just kind of an inciting incident. It kind of doesn't matter that you don't see what happens to him, right? Because he's superfluous to the point. They've solved the problem themselves, and they know from now on not to trust that guy. All right, so go into your character notes, do your final round of notes on everything, and we will talk about the play more in class. But I hope you enjoyed Much Ado About Nothing. Until I see you in class, bye everybody.